Now we are going to talk about building interactive and fast web applications using Astro, Astro DB, and htmx. As you already know, my name is Maciek Palmowski. This photo is proof that this is the real me. I work at PatchTech, as you already know, as a security community manager. And if you ever would like to contact me, just send me an email. Wait a second, there is some update that I don't want. And this guy here who will be joining me in about the half of the presentation is Carlo, Daniele. Jesus, okay. It's kind of annoying, yeah. He works at Kinsta as business development, manager? Yeah. And you can contact him using this email. And he's a bit more smiling and he wears glasses, so you might mistake him. You know, like Superman and Clark Kent. Okay. Okay. So, quickly an agenda. First, I will talk a bit what is Astro, especially for those who never heard of it, never used it. Okay. Next, we'll talk about htmx. This will be Carlo. Then he will jump into Astro DB. Sorry, I will just turn off the notifications because of course, all my family suddenly let me quit this. Where is Telegram is here. Let me just remove the Discord. Okay, this time I think we're already, so we're back. So, okay, let's go back. Astro, htmx, then we will have, I hope, some time for Q&A. If we don't have, you can just find us somewhere. And at the end, I really hope that we'll all take a selfie together, because it's always a fun thing to have a photo together. So, first of all, why even Astro? Because I was always, and Carlo too, we were mostly into PHP. I can even say, which for some of you might sound horrible, we are even from the WordPress world. So, and at some point, everyone started talking about headless, about Gatsby, about Next. And I always decided to, I will give it a try. I will check how it works. And honestly, I was really disappointed. I felt that converting WordPress into Gatsby was kind of over-engineered. I didn't saw that much of gains compared to the amount of work that I had to do. And the most things that people were saying that they gained thanks to Gatsby, for example, performance, wasn't by changing the architecture, it was just by the fact that they converted their website into static. So for me, for most of the time, the whole headless movement was kind of, I don't get it. But at some point, Astro happened. I remember it was version 0.60 pre-alpha or whatever. So I consider kind of myself as an Astro hipster. I used Astro before it was cool. And I remember when it showed up, the thing that got me interested in it was two things. First of all, they mentioned a lot about performance, that there will be zero JavaScript on the front end and things like this. So I was like, okay, this is something totally opposite of what Gatsby and Next are doing with pushing a lot of JavaScript, even if you don't want it. And also it was simple. And the simplicity was the thing, because this is how a typical, the most simplest Next.js component looks like. It's just a line of HTML, it's just a horizontal rule with some classes. But you still have to add some additional code, some additional fluff to it to make it work. And with Astro, it was, you can just kind of paste HTML. You know, like in PHP with using include. You just paste whatever you want and include it. So those were the things that kind of was, okay, I will give it a try, because this may be the thing that will get me interested. And it got. But what is Astro anyway? First of all, yes, it's a JS framework. It started as a static site generator, but over time, it became a really full-blown, full-stack JavaScript framework. It's built with performance in mind. You will see a lot of slides about it in a minute, because I pointed, but in general, they do care about the performance. Because it's very important, because Astro is not for applications, it's for content websites. And with content websites, the performance is really, really important. All the optimizations are crucial. And also, there is no vendor lock-in. You can use any framework with Astro. You can use React, you can use Vue, Svelte, you can even use jQuery, you know? And what's fun, you can use all of them at the same time. I also show you this. And you might not fully see it, but this is from the JS survey that was conducted this year. And you can see how Astro is gaining popularity. At the beginning, it was like 3% of people. And this year, 90% of people were already kind of trying it. So it's really getting more and more popular. But it's not just about us developers trying new stuff. There are more and more big brands that are trying this. You can see on this picture, Porsche, there is United Nations, Netlify, StackBlitz, Cloudflare. A lot of big brands are giving Astro a try, either for documentation, for their documentation portals, for their websites. It doesn't matter. They are trying Astro. But what is so amazing about it? First of all, the island architecture. So if you are using any other JS framework like React or Vue, of course, first you have to have some skeleton HTML, you load the framework, and then everything starts working. With island architecture, it's also called partial hydration. It's a bit different. So imagine this is your website. You have your header, your sidebar, your content, your carousel, and footer. The simplest website. But all of them are strictly isolated from each other. This is the biggest difference. All of them can be loaded in a bit different way. Now, I mentioned this, you can bring your own framework. So imagine that for some reason, header, content, and footer are just HTML, nothing else. But in sidebar, you want to use Vue, and for some reason, because you had this really amazing component built in React, the carousel. But you also didn't have enough time to refactor it into Vue. Yeah, it happens. You know how it is with deadlines and everything. But thanks to Astro, you can use Vue and React at the same time. So you can use both of them. And probably at some point you will rebuild the carousel into Vue, so you won't have to, but sometimes it might be useful. But loading Vue and React at the same time, it doesn't sound like a good idea from the performance perspective. And I said that Astro cares about performance. But there are client directives. So it means that sidebar will be loaded as soon as possible using client load. But the carousel will start loading when we scroll the content enough until some point, until it gets visible. So React will be loaded together with the component at the moment when it's needed. And thanks to client directives, you can really control what is loaded and when. But yeah, again, clients directives have one column. They are for frontend. But there are also server islands. It's a really new thing, but there is also a possibility to grab something from the server. It's a bit like those React server components, but made simple. So you have a component, you add the server defer, and inside you kind of have the default behavior before the server loads it. So again, you have a lot of control, what is loaded, how it's loaded, when it's loaded. So really, performance in mind. And yeah, now we'll go through all the things that Astro does for performance. So like I said, to achieve this with Astro, it's quite simple, like really simple. First thing, this graph is from the creator of Eleventy, because Eleventy kind of shares the philosophy that Astro has. And here you can see how much kilobytes of uncompressed JavaScript is loaded by default by each framework. This is a bit outdated because here you can see Astro 2, and right now we have Astro 5 beta, but Astro doesn't load any JS on the front end. The same as Eleventy and same as Enhance. I don't have a clue what Enhance is. But if you look at Next.js, almost 250 kilobytes of uncompressed JavaScript that is loaded always. The same goes with Next and Remix, quite a lot. Image optimization. There are two great components, one called image, second called picture, that will just, as the name stands, convert this into the EMG tag, but with all the optimizations needed. So it will print out the size, it will convert to the format you want, it will add a proper loading strategy, decoding strategy, things like this. And with the picture, there are also possibility to add more sizes and things like that. Typical things, but in the one line of code. Prefetching strategies. Well, prefetching isn't performance per se, it's kind of a perceived performance, because people will think your website is so fast because they just click the link and the page suddenly appears because it loaded in the background. So there are a few of them: hover, tap, viewport, load. So they're quite self-explanatory. So when you hover the link, the website starts loading in the background. With the viewport, all the links that are on the viewport starting load in the background, and with load, everything is loaded in the background. Quite cool. I have to drink because I'm talking too much. That's a great tactic because I would forget about it. Developer experience. This is something I truly love about Astro. And remember, I'm from WordPress world, so it's quite easy to make me happy about this. First of all, content collections. Who ever worked with website with thousands of markdown files? No one? Horrible. If you make one mistake, then you will be looking, what the hell happened? With content collections, you first define a schema, what happens in the front matter part. So in this case, we have the schema with the title, which should be a string, and image that should also be a string because it's a URL, and it's optional. So every time when I create a markdown file, it checks if it has the title and the image. If it doesn't, it will throw out this beautiful, colorful error explaining me, hey, this file doesn't matter the collection schema, the field title is required. So if you have like thousands of markdown files, or you're trying to migrate from one variable to another, it's amazing. But they decided that, okay, let's go a step further. So they just implemented a content layer API. It's in beta. So because content collections were just for Markdown and Markdown X files, and content layer is for everything, also for Markdown and Markdown X, but also for REST APIs, JSON data, everything. So you create very simple. You see that it's a loader. You get some data from the API, you create the schema, and it's saved. And then you can see, wait, I did something wrong. Wait a second. Wait, okay, this button. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, I know. Okay, so it's, yeah, it was. In short, here you see that there is a collection, and based on this collection, whenever you use, it's stored in one place. So it doesn't fetch the data every time, it's stored once, which is cool. Another thing is a really nice CLI. So creating an Astro project is as easy as running npx create Astro latest. It will ask you a lot of questions: what folder name, which template, do you want TypeScript, do you want a Git repository, things like this. It's very simple. The same goes with upgrading Astro. There is this Astro.js upgrade command, possibility to add things. You just npmx name of the package. It's easy because it's not only install the package, it also add all the things required to the configuration. So it's really simple. And maintaining 2 Astro websites and the upgrade process is really cool. Nothing broke, until now. Clear errors. I'm a horrible JavaScript developer because, like I said, I'm from PHP world. So I see the screen quite a lot. And they're very helpful because they really try to, I don't have time, explain what I'm doing wrong, and so I can fix it. Okay, I just say that the documentation is really top-notch, so you won't have any problems navigating in the space. There is a very nice tool called the developer toolbar. As you see, it will kind of help you finding mistakes on your website in a visible way. Okay, there are integration with CMSs, there are themes. It's very easy to, for example, install Tailwind. It's quite similar almost to WordPress plugins, so it's really that. And some other quickly cool stuff. File-based routing, either quite static one or dynamic one with variables in the brackets. Server-side mode, hybrid. And of course you can, because it's for content websites, you can create it in different languages. There are a lot of helpful functions that will help you have your website in many languages. And now it's turn for my dear friend Carlo.
Thank you, Maciek. Does it work?
Have fun.
Thank you. So, it was a very quick introduction to a huge product. But anyway, which is the sense of this presentation? Where it comes from? It comes from a discussion from not me and Maciek, but from me and the HTML.it manager, who asked me, what technologies would you like to share with our readers? What's the most promising technology right now? And my opinion, those technologies were Astro and htmx, because they are fast, they are, I think, reliable, and it's really a great developer experience for anyone who tried these technologies. Anyway, nothing is for everything. So those technologies are fit for specific projects, mostly based on content. But with this due introduction, we can go forward. And what is htmx? htmx is a JavaScript library that extends the normal use of HTML. So we are speaking of a library, a JavaScript library, that does not require any JavaScript knowledge from the coder, from the developer. This is also known as zero JavaScript approach. And that's great because it's totally easy for anyone to start building interactive applications with htmx. And it perfectly integrates with Astro. Now there is something more interesting about Astro, that is the database support that now is under construction in some way, because they dismissed their previous solution with Astro Studio, but there will be something new shortly. Anyway, back to htmx. It provides features that are not natively available in HTML, but are supported by all browsers and are accessible via JavaScript. So you can, thanks to htmx, use those features in some sort of HTML code. And these features include Ajax, CSS transitions, WebSockets, and server-sent events, and more, even more. So, first, how the popularity of htmx. It's becoming very popular worldwide because it is now has more 37,000 stars on GitHub, and was ranked second in Rising Stars ranking of the most popular front-end frameworks of 2023, just after React. What can you do with htmx? With htmx, any DOM element can send HTTP requests, even an image or a paragraph or whatever. You know, whereas in normal HTML, only anchors and forms can send HTTP requests. Any event can trigger an HTTP request, not just clicks and form submissions. All HTTP verbs are supported, and I will show an example later, not just get and post. Any element can be the target of a request. This is the most interesting part here, because you are targeting a single element where you will inject the response from the server, you know? So you won't need to reload the page at any response. Another great things of htmx, it responds with HTML code. not with JSON. So this is time saving. This way, you remain within the original web programming model, of course, and the response is injected directly into the page with transclusion. You only need to specify the target DOM element. This is classical response from a server. You know, it is a JSON response, but you need to convert JSON to JS to HTML. Then you can render it on the page. While with htmx, you just have HTML from the server. And this is a normal, the common response from the server when you use htmx. Now, an example how it works. With attributes, these are simple HTML attributes. This is the API endpoint you are sending the request to, and the target is the div or the container or the DOM element that is the target of the response. And this is, in this case, just a div with ID outcome. We can use all HTTP methods. So if you see here we are sending a GET request, but we can do post, put, patch, and delete request. And this can be done from any element on the page. For example, this is another attribute, htmx trigger. You can trigger any event. You know, any event can send a request. Okay, and you all can also create more elaborated structures with, for example, modifiers, in this case once, which force to send a request only once, not every time an event happens on the page. And there are more elaborated triggers. For example, you can click holding the control key, or with a combination of, for example, control key and U, or even, we can go even further. In this case, you need to focus the element, otherwise, in this case, the focus can be the whole page. And another attribute, I will go fast for, of course, so we can switch the content of the target in different ways. You can quickly understand what happens in HTML if you are injecting the code inside the element, outer HTML if you are completely replacing the element before the element begins or after, and so it's quite easy. I invite you to read the documentation. I would have liked to share some resources, but it's not my computer, so I don't have the links. But if you are interested, I will share all the resources with you later. And this is an example of HX swap, how the target element behaves depending on the HX swap value. For example, if you are using outer HTML, you are forcing the complete substitution, replacement of the div. You know, if you have used inner HTML, the response from the server would have been injected inside the div. Now, let's install htmx in Astro. That's quite easy. If you are used to Astro, you should simply use this script tag in the header of the document, the header component. And these are a few resources. If you see the html.it link, it's where you will find everything about this presentation in a more detailed way. So if you take a screenshot of this, you can dive deeper later. Now, Astro DB. Now the fun part. Now you can leverage a new feature of Astro, which is Astro DB, which is a new feature and is still under heavy development from a certain point of view. So what is it? It's a fully managed SQL database based on Drizzle ORM. Who knows Drizzle? Okay. And yep, we will discuss this later. I will share a few links later. And it's just a framework that allows you to perform SQL-like operations via JavaScript. You know, that's amazing. That's easy and it's fun. So it's based on libsql. Anyway, we first need to use Astro DB. We need to install it, and there's are a few commands. You just need to run a few commands, and you have Astro DB on your Astro installation, and that's it. This adds something into your config.js file, and this is what happens to your Astro config.mjs file. You are adding Astro DB and integration DB. This just add 2 lines of code. Also, it uses an adapter, and this example is Node. Now, here is where you need to add the htmx library. In this situation, we have downloaded it from the repo and added it where? In the layout. This is the default template, so it may be different from the template you are using, but this is the default installation, and you can use it inside the layout. Now, this is the database configuration file. When you install Astro DB, you have a new folder, which is DB, as you can see here, with 2 files, config.ts and seed.ts. Here, you are defining the tables of your database. So you have a project. In this example, we have just a to-dos table and a categories table with a few columns. Note the reference, because it is a relational model. And this is the first part. The second part is, okay, this is a reference. The seeding. This is nice because you can provide Astro DB or your application a few records to start working, to start your development and testing. And this data are erased, cancelled at any restart of your application. So it's just for developing. And in this situation here, in this, we are adding 5 categories and 2 to-dos. Then we start using this. And finally, these are the magic of Drizzle. You can use methods to interact with your database. In this example, we are using select because we are selecting a few fields from this table. But we can build also more advanced, more structured queries. And in this situation, we have the equal operator we can use to create conditions. And we also have joins. That's nice because we can create more elaborated responses to work with. In this case, we just ask for a category ID and a corresponding name with the relations with, between the 2 tables. Another method, insert. We can add new records where it's easy. If you have experience with SQL, that's immediate. It's simple. Insert to-dos, what, values, task, cat ID, and done. Returning 5 minutes. returning, get me back the last record I added. And again, in this example, I just asking to return one field of the last record. Okay, update. We can update existing records, and again, with more elaborated queries, or even delete some records. And this is a few documents about Astro DB, and I would suggest to give a check to GitHub, because everything is much more clear on the repo, and you also have a link to an example application. And again, html.it guide, and this is something new about Astro DB, because they are saying goodbye to Astro Studio, and they are moving to a more general support for different kinds of database solutions.